Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome to another Mortal Kombat video. Now in today's history of breakdown and analysis, I won't be so much talking about a particular character, but in fact the Mortal Kombat tournament as a whole. You see, the Mortal Kombat tournament has always been a pivotal part of the Mortal Kombat universe, and a real defining point of the series. But when and why did this come into existence, and why was this tournament created? Well, in today's video we'll be going to the very start of the series, and cover every known tournament to have taken place in the Mortal Kombat series from both the old and current canon. Now for us to actually talk about this topic, we do in fact have to talk about an array of different factors that led to the tournament's creation, as well as the realms themselves. Now with that being said, let's go to the dawn of time, where nothing existed and it was simply just an empty void. But in due time, life would form from the darkness, giving form to primordial deities, the first being known as the Elder God, but they weren't the only individuals born from the universe, as when they came into existence, so did an individual known as the One Being, a very strong and aggressive primordial god, and as expected, a power struggle would break out between both sides, as the One Being himself had a taste for Elder God blood, feasting on their divinity in order to survive. Now whilst the Elder Gods were mighty in their own right, they would be completely outclassed by the One Being's sheer strength, so they would formulate a plan to defeat the One Being through the use of Kami-Dogu amulets. Upon using them on a grand deity, they would physically and mentally separate his consciousness into separate physical planes of reality, and these separate different planes would eventually grow into the realms as we know it. As life began to flourish amongst the realms, the Elder Gods decided to take on the mantle of responsibility, wanting to guide the life from these realms in their own right and direction, while still maintaining a close eye on the realm, understandably still weary of the One Being's possible return. It's actually the main reason as to why the Elder Gods don't really wish to touch the mortal plane, out of fear that by doing so, he will in fact awaken. Now if gods appointed to each realm, the mortal plane would begin to flourish, but it would all be thrown into disarray when the fallen Elder God Shinnok was disgusted with the life created from the One Being's body, thus attempting to exterminate what he had created. But this mission would fail, as his fellow brother and sisters restrained him and imprisoned him to the Netherrealm for all eternity as punishment. So this now being done, let's quickly turn our attention away to another big player in the universe, the original ruler of Outworld and leader of the unkillable army Onaga. Deemed by many as the first and true ruler of Outworld, Onaga was an unstoppable force in the universe. Physically, his power was nearly unmatched, his talent in necromancy was uncanny, and his incredible power did in fact put him on the radar of the Elder Gods. But despite Onaga's incredible capabilities, instead of wishing to conquer the realms, like his advisor Shao Kahn had recommended him, he was far more infatuated by the concept and idea of immortality. You see, as mighty as Onaga was, the one thing that he knew he would eventually lose to is death itself, the empty void that no one can escape. So a great deal of his reign in time was focused on obtaining immortality. But sadly, this is something that would elude his grasp, as it seemed like just when he was about to get his answer, he would be poisoned and killed by Shao Kahn. The Dragon King would fall, and the power-hungry Emperor would rise. And this is really where the Mortal Kombat tournament starts to be born. Upon Onaga's death, his immortal army would fall into a deep slumber, leaving Shao Kahn with limited resources at his fingertips, as his armies would now be bound by flesh and blood. But that didn't stop him from recruiting the likes of the Tarkatans, Centaurs, and even Shokan, as they did respect his authority and power. And really, it's from here where the merging of realms would really begin, with Shao Kahn traveling to primitive worlds and invading their home, destroying all in sight and leave it in tatters. With its people broken, Shao Kahn would give them a choice. They would either join him as slaves or soldiers, or take the alternative route and be slain on the spot. It seemed like here Shao's plan was finally coming to fruition, as it was always his dream to merge the realms together, thus growing in power with each different one. But little did Shao actually know that he was in fact a pawn in a much larger game. You see, whilst the One Being was somewhat physically destroyed, his subconsciousness would exist across all the realms, influencing those of incredible power to merge the realms together so that he may return and use the host as a returning vessel. Now of the realms being merged, the Elder Gods, out of fear of the One Being returning, would create the Mortal Kombat Tournament as a way of postponing his possible return. This is also why the Mortal Kombat Tournament itself does have some rather strange and unorthodox rule when it does in fact come to merging the realms. Each side, which could be made up of a number of fighters, fighters must compete against each other for title of champion of Mortal Kombat. Once the offer of combat is issued, the fighter must engage with their opponent or be eliminated from the tournament. Magical powers are allowed. Fights against the opponent can only occur once the tournament has begun, and those that do win and become the champion are blessed with immortality. But a single victory is not enough for an invasion. A side must win 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments in order for an invasion to begin. This was seemingly something that the Elder Gods purposely implemented, as they felt like the likelihood of a side winning 10 consecutive tournaments was absurd. But this would not discourage Shao Kahn, and from here he would set his eyes on bigger prey, as before this he had only gone for lesser realms, those with primitive life like Vaeternus and Zartera. But here he really wanted to send a message to the Elder Gods, engaging the beautiful realm of Edenia in Mortal Kombat. Now whilst the Edenians were able to put up a formidable battle, Outworld's hordes proved to be far too aggressive for Edenia to handle, and thus after losing 10 tournaments, their world would fall before Outworld. Their home was raided, their king Jared was killed, and their people were enslaved, with their queen and princess forcibly becoming part of Shao Kahn's twisted perception of family. And it sent a message to all realms that no one was now safe. Now the fall of Edenia would in fact take place 10,000 years before the events of the very first game, and soon after Edenia's fall, Shao Kahn would set his eyes on his next realm for conquest, and this would be none other than Earthrealm. And this was seemingly a battle that would go on for thousands of years, apparently being quite back and forth, so Shao Kahn wasn't able to lay claim to the realm just yet. Now 9,000 years after Edenia's fall is actually where some interesting events unfold, because this is the first time we ever learn about what happens when the rules of Mortal Kombat are broken. During Earthrealm's skirmish with Outworld, one of the Earthrealm representatives, Shang Tsung, yes, that Shang Tsung, would break the rules of the tournament, although the finer details aren't disclosed. It is believed that he killed an opponent before the tournament had begun, and thus was cursed by the Elder Gods to age rapidly. After these events occurred, Earthrealm in fact abandoned all ties to Shang Tsung, shunning him for what he had done. But where they saw shame, Shao saw opportunity. Impressed by the ruthless nature, Shao offered him the opportunity for redemption, and for the next century, Shang Tsung would study the dark arts at Shao Kahn's side. He would then use this skill to drain the souls of any he touched, therefore undoing the curse put upon him by the Elder Gods, and thus he was revitalized to his youthful form. And as the next tournament dawned on the horizon, Shang Tsung would enter under Outworld's banner, decimating any Earthrealmers in his way, and win 9 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments. But his overconfidence and arrogance would get the better of him. 500 years before the events of the first game, the end did seem nigh as Shang Tsung was dominating the competition, but it's here where he would hit a brick wall in the form of the Great Kung Lao. Shang's overconfidence had gotten the better of him, and he was swiftly defeated by the Shaolin, postponing Outworld's invasion and sending Shang home as a broken mess. But the Great Kung Lao's reign would not last very long, because in the following tournament, Shang's protege and prince of the Shogun, Goro, would enter, overwhelming Lao with his incredible power. Underprepared for the Shogun prince, the Great Kung Lao would fall to his hand, and Goro would reign as champion for 9 consecutive tournaments. So, as you would imagine, this brings us up to the very first game. Knowing that this may be their last chance, Raiden would have the White Lotus Society bring forth their strongest warrior. A prodigy taught in the ways of the Shaolin, Liu entered the tournament and swept his way through the competition, defeating the likes of not only the champion Goro, but also Shang Tsung. So Outworld was once again stopped in its tracks, and understandably at this point, the Emperor had grown frustrated with Earthrealm constantly eluding his grasp, so he organized a somewhat false tournament. The second tournament in the Mortal Kombat series isn't a traditional tournament, not one that follows the schedule organized by the Elder Gods, and Shao Kahn fully expected to win this tournament as it was held on his home turf. Regardless of however false this tournament was, Liu would emerge victorious, defeating the Emperor and infuriating him once again. But it's here where the tournament really does take a back seat, as the third game of the series is completely focused on Earthrealm's invasion, and the fourth installment is focused on Shinnok's invasion and extermination of the realms, of which he is unsuccessful in doing. The next game where there is a somewhat tournament is in fact Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. After Shao and Liu Kang perish, a tournament is held by the duo of Quan Chi and Shang Tsung, of which they will grant the victor of the tournament any prize of their choosing. Now much like Mortal Kombat 2, it isn't strictly a Mortal Kombat tournament, not one that was put together by the minds of the Elder Gods, but the tournament itself was in fact formulated by the duo so they could could harvest the souls of the victor to revive the Dragon King's army. And of course the victor of this tournament would in fact be Li Mei, who could be seen as the somewhat pseudo-protagonist of the game, as she was participating in this battle to free her enslaved people from the Deadly Alliance grasps. And in Deception and Armageddon, the 3D games stray away from the tournament format in form of more of a narrative-driven story in the form of the Mortal Kombat Conquest mode. Now, of course, by the end of the series, Shao is victorious in absorbing Blaze's power and does become the One Being. Unfortunately for the Grand Deity, Raiden's able to send a message to his past self, and this serves as a way of rebooting the franchise. Now, in the rebooted timeline, everything seems the same on the surface, but there has in fact been some slight tweaks and expansion to already existing lore, such as Shao conquering the Kaitin Ojtek and more. Takata is in fact its own realm, instead of the half-demon, half-outworlders they were originally conceived as. The fall of Edenia is seemingly the same, with the slight tweak that now Sindel did play a part in it, having killed King Jared in favour of Shao Kahn's power, Great Kung Lao defeating Shang Tsung, Goro's rise to champion, and of course Liu defeating Goro and Shang Tsung in the first tournament, and Shao Kahn in the second. The only tweak in the reboot continuity is how it's not the invasion of realms that is forbidden, but instead the merging of them that is banned. We see this at the end of Mortal Kombat 9, where Outworlders attacking Earthrealm, but the Elder Gods don't do anything until Shao Kahn does attempt to merge the realms together, to which they then step in and empower Raiden with their divine energy. Here he is of course able to defeat Shao Kahn, to which he's then taken before the Elder Gods for punishment and does seemingly die. This is the last time a tournament has taken place in the Mortal Kombat universe, as Mortal Kombat X focuses on a new generation of fighters, and MK11 is a time-displaced battle. And with Aftermath's ending, and the direction that Liu Kang's may be following, it seems like the Great Kung Lao will be the protagonist of future games, and the tournament will once again be returning. But for now, we just don't know, and we won't know until the next installment in the Mortal Kombat franchise. But until then, that has been it for the history of the Mortal Kombat tournaments. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learnt more by doing so. I really did want to talk about this topic because recently I did do the history of Reptile episode, and it made me start to think and wonder when/why did these tournaments come into effect, and how does it affect the universe. The Mortal Kombat tournament is such an important part of the series, but it hasn't really been explored, so it's absolutely something I wish to talk about here and kind of break down for you guys at home, as we've only ever heard about the tournaments but never really known too much about them. So hopefully this shines a little bit more of a light on them of what we don't know. But anyway guys, that's it for this video. So now before it wraps up, if possible, let's try getting it to about 500 likes, and also do not forget to tick that bell, as a great way of keeping up to date with my content and everything that's going on. So now, as always, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I'll see you all next time.